Hi, my name is John-Allan Namu. I'm the co-founder of Africa Uncensored. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. Unfortunately, I can't be there with you virtually because I'm on the road and unable to log on. But you are in luck though. You are amongst the first audiences that are going to take a first look at our new documentary, The Invisible Line. Now, COVID-19 has forced upon us a number of issues. We've been forced to focus on healthcare, on the economy, as well as a number of other issues. But in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in the United States and the murder of at least 22 people here at home, allegedly by the police, it's time that we focus on policing here as well. What systems have allowed for there to be such brutal policing of the general public? And also the other underlying question in this is it really the general public that suffer the worst whenever that kind of brutal policing is meted out? Let's hope you enjoy, watch, share, learn, and thank you very much for joining the webinar. Once again, please subscribe to Africa Uncensored.
There will be a daily curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. And this shall be in effect in the territory of the Republic of Kenya. If these measures are deemed to be inadequate, we shall, without hesitation, take even further and more drastic measures.
Kenya's fight to stop the spread of the global COVID-19 pandemic may have been targeted at saving lives. From the start, enforcement of the curfew exposed a far more stubborn problem in Kenya: police brutality. Within a matter of weeks, 22 people were dead and hundreds beaten by the police, presumably enforcing the government's directive. There's a thread that joins these deaths and the violence that swept ashore with COVID-19, stretching back to before Kenya's independence.
So methods of policing tended to be violent, tended to be coercive, and I think those traditions, those practices, were continued after 1963.
These problems also reflect a class divide Kenyans know exist, but don't often speak about.
How can they relate with somebody who's been beaten? They can't, because that's a state of weakness. That's a state of vulnerability, which they can never relate to. And that's the situation we find ourselves in.
My name is John-Allan Namu. I'm a Kenyan journalist, and as the COVID-19 virus has spread, I've been looking into cases of police brutality.
Aliponigonga ni kama niliflip nikaanguka nikapoteza fahamu. When I came to, niliamka nikakuta sina simu.
I've also investigated a murder that speaks to Kenya's class lines.
It is no excuse for a police officer to say, "Oh, then we will kill them."
A riot has exploded in Nairobi's Mathare slum. Street fires have been lit and tension is high. One of their own has just been shot to death. The men on the streets here are convinced that the police are responsible. It's yet another killing of one of the second one here since the announcement of a nationwide dusk to dawn curfew by Kenya's president. Before long, this lifeless body is taken away and hidden as protests heat up. A few short clips of this footage are sent to Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi, who posts them on his timeline. Soon, news of the man's death is all over the internet. A long night of running battles ensues as the police battle to get the shooting victim's body from this enraged crowd.
Maandamano ilikuwa hapa. Sasa naye mzee alipigwa risasi hapa. Alikuwa amededi hapa, alikuwa amelala kwa hii kuta.
Mwai Kariuki, a youth leader in this community, owns a kiosk just meters away from the scene of the crime. He was one of the first people on the scene and took photos of the man who was killed.
Kwa tumbo hapa juu ya kitovu alikuwa na injury moja. Kwa mguu yake ya left ya right kama ilikuwa imepasuka kabisa. Kwa hapo mpaka nguo hapo ndio damu mingi ilikuwa. Lakini kwa tumbo ilikuwa tu ni shimo. So ni mtu anajulikana kwa. Ni mzee anajulikana, anaitwa kwa Mapei. Yeah. Mapei. Si Vaite ni wale sasa wa marafiki zake. Lakini yule mtu amjui anamscribe kwa ana meno anamuita Mapei.
Mwai knew this man, as did almost everyone who saw him here every day. They knew him by his nickname, Vaite, but his real name is James Moradi. James was to the people here yet another victim of a police killing. But in the hours since his death, the police had their own version of events.
We have very clear witnesses who told us that this guy was followed by people in motorbike, about 5 persons in motorbike.
This is a homeless man.
Yes, you know, whether you are homeless or you have a home, a criminal who meets you may not know that you are homeless. Remember, this is Dandora Bridge.
Already, the facts around the killing of James Moradi were being twisted. James's body was found in Mathare, approximately 7 kilometers away from the location that the police spokesman says that eyewitnesses saw him being pursued and shot. As for who was armed and on the streets at the approximate time that Moradi was killed,
mwendo wa saa 1 na dakika 10 na kitu tunajuanga ni saa ya makarao kupita wakipiga risasi juu ili watu wafunge makazi zao, wale wamewafunga na wale wajaingia kwa manyumba waweze kuingia kwa manyumba. Lakini jana ilikuwa tofauti cause zile milio ya risasi tulisikia ilikuwa tofauti cause the moment ilihiti mse fulani tulisikia hiyo impact ilikuwa juu sana. Kwa hivyo risasi ya mwisho nilisikia ikiwa pale na mimi nilikuwa na expect makarao watokelezee wakipanda hivi, lakini baada ya kurudi hivi wakupanda hivi warudi na saidi ya bonde. Kwa hivyo walipogonga ule msee walimpiga risasi kama 3-4. Kwa hivyo sisi tuliposikia wameenda tulienda barabara ya chini kuona kama wameenda kwenda tukakuta msee amelala chini.
Deaths, serious injuries, followed by denial have been the police's interpretation of how to enforce the government COVID-19 protocols. Curfew look. Since the start of the curfew, 19 people were killed by police, with 95 others injured, according to the Kenya Police Reform Working Group. A majority of these deaths were in poor neighborhoods, like the one James Moradi died in. In total, 103 people have either been killed or disappeared by the police between January and July, putting 2020 on track to be one of Kenya's deadliest years in over a decade. Kenya's Internal Security Ministry has disputed these figures. As I would learn just a few days after visiting the scene of James Moradi's death, the manner in which he died wouldn't be the only thing being disputed. After his body was taken from protesters, it was brought here, the Nairobi County City Mortuary. He was registered as unknown. It seemed that this would be where a forensic investigation into James's death would end. But his family heard that he had been murdered. We met them here. James's younger brother, Jamlek, seemed upset.
First round walikuwa wananiambia nitoke nje, lakini wakati nisema it is my right ndio walikubali, na kila wakati walikuwa nataka nikaribie kwa hiyo mwili, lakini mimi nga insist. Kwa naniuliza wewe sio daktari, wewe sio ofisa, ngamwambia but I have the right kuona what is happening.
Jamlek's insistence may have just kept hopes of solving James' murder alive.
So these are 3 gunshots which are capable of killing even individually, but now you combine the one on the abdomen and the one on the legs, and that really was the cause of death, hemorrhage. A lot of bleeding. In our terms, we call it exsanguination. So, as I always say, this is the cause of death. That's hemorrhage due to multiple gunshots at close range.
Could you determine for us?
Less than 20 centimeters.
Less than 20 centimeters?
Yes.
That the gun was fired less than
20 centimeters from the body.
For all 3 bullets?
What? All the 3 bullets, yes.
But the road to solving this case won't be easy. Already, Jamlek has had to fight to get to this point.
Wakati nilienda kwa hospitali aliniambia niende kwa CEO crime. Walinichunguza kwa ikabidi niende kwa ndisi yao. Station hakuna herufi nilipata. Walinichunguza tu na kuniongeleza na ukali. Yeah. I feel very bad and very bitter. Kwanza wakati nienda kusaidizi kutafuta usaidizi wa polisi naongelezwa mbaya. Wewe ni abrosa brother. I feel very bitter. Man and Murati alikubira kama kiunyama.
James's sister, Jane Rose, is also concerned by how James was labeled when he was killed. James was a homeless man, but that isn't all that he was.
Na ulisema uko na picha yake, unajua ambazo tumezisoma. Tulisema tuliona
homeless man. Na hapa tuliambiwa hapa tuliambiwa unknown man. Ndio waliandika hiyo nini? Unknown man.
Lakini si wewe unajua.
Si ndio, ni brother yangu Lil. Mama moja baba moja.
Na uko na picha yake.
Huyu ni first born yake, huyu ni bibi yake. Aka nikangu.
Na huyu ni wewe sio?
Ni mimi huyo.
In fact, this is very funny for my brother is not homeless. Is first case in graduate. Ni mtu alikuwa engineer, although sasa iko pale ifika akachanganyikiwa na maisha kidogo. Na kuenda madhara alikuwa anatafutia watoto yake. He is a family man, akona bibi na watoto 3. Form 4, Form 3 na class 8.
As we are talking about James, we receive a call from activist Boniface Mwangi. He's been summoned by the police over a post he published about James Moradi's death. We accompany him to the police station.
Are you worried at all that once you enter here, you might find an altogether different reception?
Yes, I'm worried because you know what police normally do when they kill people, they cover up. And the first way to cover up anything, you discredit the messenger. So what I did, I posted a video about the killing and the body of the man who was killed. That's the only thing that I did. And I got the information from people working in Madare, like the activists in Madare. That's all I did. So I'm here. I don't know what to expect. And I hope that I'm not going to get detained.
Jamlek, Jane Rose, and other family members would also come to the station to follow up on the investigation. Jamlek had told us just hours before about how police treated him as he sought answers over his brother's death. Bonnie gets to see this for himself.
There's a problem in this country. It's a big issue. So, need to wipe my tears. I was summoned in the morning by the DCS to come and answer. He had questions for me. So I came, then he spoke to me, asked me, what did you post? I said what I posted. I also tried a statement because they're investigating an allegation that someone was killed in Mathare. An allegation that someone was shot dead in Mathare. It's not a fact to them. It's someone was shot. And that breaks my heart because someone lost their father, someone lost a relative, it was somebody's son, it was somebody's father. But with them, it's an allegation. And the way they're very casual about it, it's not like they're dealing with someone like a human being. It's like, by the way, for them, it's just a statistic. And when I was there, the family was there. And the way they're talking to them, ulikuwa kutuambia nini? Unajua nini? Ulisikia nini?
Accounts of what happened on the night of James's death have been discredited by the police even before the investigation could begin. But his case has gone much further than others have, even when evidence of a murder is on tape and in broad daylight. Violent protests are underway in Kayole, a lower middle-class neighborhood in Nairobi. Kenya is in the middle of a political stalemate after the opposition boycotted participation in a second presidential election.
Hiyo uchaguzi wa 26 Oktoba ni bandia. Hatutambui. Tunasema Uhuru Kenyatta sio rais wa Kenya.
The government's response has been to violently crack down on the opposition supporters. The police do not disappoint. So far, one protester has been shot to death. And as the violence of the day reaches fever pitch, we witness something shocking, even in a time like this. Police are walking past this side street when this man, who was on patrol with the police, half sprints down the street. A young man is hiding behind this pile of blocks. Two men watched from this apartment block as what happened next unfolded.
Huyo kijana nilimwona kuna opposite plot iko hapo karibu na kwetu. Kuna mali karibu na kona alikuwa ameenda ameketi hapo, unaona. Na kuketi hapo mimi kumuona nikajua polisi wakikuja wataki kujua nani alikuwa ama nani hakuwa. Wataenda watakugonga ama wakufanyia mambo mengine yenye si mazuri. Kajaribu kumuita ile wanakuja uingie hapa ndani angalau utakuwa safe. Lakini katika ile ya kulewa ile tu seriously, unaona, amebleed ile seriously, ni akaniambia, yani akanifanyia ishara ya mkono, yani wacha tu mimi mali niko hapa, wacha tu nijifiche hapa, unaona. Na mimi sasa sikuwa na lingine kwa sababu singeweza mrudi ni msupport, nitukimbie naye, naweza kwenda nirudi hivyo na labda tutashutia wote pamoja. Nikabaki mimi nimeingia, nimefunga mlango, mimi nilikuwa hapa juu hapo kwa ghorofa, angalia hapo.
Nini kafanyika?
Yeah.
Niambie tu tena.
Ile kitu, ile askari alikuja hapo, askari alikuja, watu wanaanza kukimbia, sawa? Ile mtu nakatu hapo kwa karibu na blocks hapo, nakula pia. Nilikuwa na task bili, nakula pia. Ile askari alikuja hapo, linafaa ni overall ya blue. Alikuja tu napiga risasi tatu.
Other policemen can be heard urging him on. We have to stop recording before anyone notices that this shooting has been caught on tape. Bystanders would rush him to a nearby clinic, after which he was taken to the Mama Lucy hospital. By that time, he had died. Identifying this shooter has been difficult. He's out of uniform, and his cap conceals his face. It is difficult to tell which unit he's from, because at the time, officers from various police units were combined to deal with civil unrest linked to the disputed election. of James Murezi. Was planted right at the very beginning of policing in Kenya. David Anderson is a professor of African studies and author of the book Histories of the Hanged, one of the most comprehensive exposés of British crimes in colonial Kenya. He has been publishing on the topic of policing in Kenya since the 1970s.
Kenya's colonial experience was quite distinctive in being one of the most violent colonies of them all. So if you compare levels of state violence in colonial Kenya, they are considerably higher than any other British colony in Africa and higher than British colonies in Asia. When Kenya's police force was established in 1902, the initial police force was only there to protect the European community. It didn't actually police the African areas. So in those days, the African areas were known as native reserves. Yeah. And in the native reserves, the policing was done by the chiefs and the headmen. So guys with a rungu, who would come around and deal with you.
My name is George Musamali. I'm a security and safety consultant based in Nairobi, Kenya. I joined the police service in 1989. That was December 1st. And during recruitment, I was deployed to the General Service Unit, where I trained for 6 months in the Bakassi General Service Unit Training School. And the motivation behind me joining the force is that I come from a policing family. My father was a policeman. My grandfather was a policeman. Those days, people were conscripted into the service. You did not join voluntarily. The colonialists used to go to the villages, look for strong young men, and then enlist them in the police.
From its very beginnings, policing of Africans was done without care for the Africans themselves. But in white areas, this was different. By the mid-1930s, a parallel system of policing in Kenya was firmly in place. One system for the rich colonialist and another for the African native. While policing then was unfair and exploited the black man, the culture of violence that Kenyans witness today would really be shaped from 1952, the start of Kenya's 8-year emergency period and the war against the Mau Mau.
This Mau Mau is a lawless and savage organization, and I must, at all costs, see that respect for law and order is obtained.
Now that change is very important because it brings the police into close proximity with the people, but it does so out of a coercive tradition of the Mau Mau period, when police live in armed, fortified police stations, where they're used to being able to arrest who they like for interrogation without having to have a proper order, where they expect the courts just to rubber stamp what they do, where they expect no investigation of their activities.
I had a chat with my grandfather and he told me, you see, those were dangerous times, it was during emergency, and if you did not join, then you were grouped amongst the rebels, and then you were picked, taken to concentration camps. So some of these people were forced into the service. And remember, most of the fighting was not happening in Western Kenya, where we originate from, but in Central Kenya. So they were picking strong young men from Western Kenya, Nyanza, and sending them to fight the Mau Mau in Central Kenya. So we cannot actually say that there was any form of pride, because this is not something that he did out of his own volition, but he was pushed into it by the circumstances those days.
By the time that the emergency was over, Kenya's police force numbers had more than doubled, from 5,718 at the start of the emergency to over 10,000 when Kenya gained its independence. But a newly independent Kenyan police force already had a culture of violence against poor communities, and it wasn't about to change.
In the colonial period, as I've said, formal policing was aimed at the wealthier communities. In '63, when Kenya became independent, essentially the policing structures remained in place. And in fact, the police commanders, who by 1963 were all African, had been all recruited and trained in the 1950s. And most of those police who ran the Kenya Police Force in 1964 and who would run it for the next 40 years were men who had come through the Mama period. So they'd earned their experience in Kenya's most violent moment.
Laws that gave the police immense powers during the colonial period would be the foundation upon which an independence police force would be built.
We had now black colonialists that took over the reins of power in this country. And instead of using the police to protect the general public, now the police focused on protecting the property that had been acquired by the leaders of this country immediately after independence. So they did not shed off that colonial mentality, and it's still there up to now. And I'll base this looking at the Police Act. They still carry the same old colonial mentality, whereby the police officers are expected to serve the interests of the rulers, as opposed to now to taking care of the general public, as is envisioned in the Constitution.
After the murder of James Murati, the message had hit home that the police were not to be played with past curfew. Driving past the spot where he was killed at night, barely anyone is about. On the same night, in a richer neighborhood, we see how the police deal with people out past curfew. We also filmed this establishment in the upmarket Kilimani neighborhood in 1 week. It is less than a kilometer away from the nearest police station. On all 3 days, it was open with customers past the 9 p.m. curfew. On one occasion, we saw this car being guided into a parking spot past 10 p.m. There have been arrests of people breaking curfew in some of Nairobi's richer neighborhoods, but travel out of this bubble and it gets a lot more violent. Just ask Samuel Maina.
Mi ni hairstylist, kunyoa, kutengeneza dredi.
So, mbona uko na hii mask?
Okay, funnily enough, siku hizi naita helmet. Hii kitu nimekuwa nikivaa, now it's like a whole 1 week sahi.
Now imagine for a moment that I'm Samuel Maina. It's a few minutes past 7 o'clock and I'm rushing home because it's past curfew. I've grabbed some groceries up the road here in Kahawa West and I've headed onto a road off of Market Street, a road that I know very well because 6 minutes from where I am at this point is my home, and 4 minutes away from where I am at this point is a police station, which is to my right. Now it is at this point that I spot a silhouette of a person that I believe to be a police officer. I'm willing to engage him because I know that I'm 7 minutes or so late past curfew. But what I don't know is that to my left, in my blind spot, another police officer lies in wait. He jumps out and smashes me across the bridge of my nose, completely shattering my nasal bone.
Hata wenye tulikuwa na wanaweza shtuka sana wakajua saa hii situation iko kwake Mungu moja. Wakaona tu venye niko saa hii na venye tulikuwa na raha. Unajua mimi hata nilifunga job mapema saa nilikuwa na leo liko
I was traumatized. Like, you can imagine you walking home from job, something you've been doing for the past tuseme kitu kama 5 years. And then you all of a sudden ambushed by a police officer mwenye ako tu merciless, hataki kujua nagonga nini, hataki kujua nagonga wapi, hataki kujua damage yenye atakos.
Imeniwasha haki, hapo ananibia hadi simu. Mtu ananibia hadi simu, ananibia na nikarao na ako na uniform akikai Mungu moja.
Unajua?
When I first met Samuel Maina, it had been a week since this video of him had been posted online. It's hard to watch. There are things about this night that are still hazy, but he does say he remembers how the police treated him after he went to report being attacked.
So what I did, I went back to the police post, nikaomba wenye sasa walikuwa huko ndani, nikawaambia naweza taka wanisaidie na kitu kama note yoyote ingenisaidia ku access medical help from the Kahawa Est area, na time ya curfew ilikuwa imeshafika. Kitu naweza patia kama ni driver wa Uber akinipeleka hosi ifate tupate access, of which walikataa. Nikamwambia basi wanipe P3, at least ukionekana ulikuwa umeenda ukaripoti kuchapa na umekosa attention hapo karibu, unaweza kubaliwa kupita, of which pia hiyo walitudeny, walikataa. Tuseme tu walikuwa dismissive. Though kuna huyu mmoja alikuwa akiambia sasa huyu best yangu waondoe huyo mwenda wazimu hapo wampeleke kwenye wanataka. Like walikuwa dismissive, hawakuwa wanataka kujua nini ita happen.
The police's reaction is something that I've heard repeated to me before by James Murati's family and now by Samuel. James isn't alive to identify his attackers, but Samuel survived, and the reaction of the police to his seeking help may be tied to what he told me as we spoke.
Unaona venye mnaweza kutana tu na mtu alafu unasikia ni watu familia kwangu, sababu unasikia kutoka penye nafanyanga job hadi penye wako. In fact building yenye nafanya job nikipanda top floor niangalie nyuma ni kiwanja, alafu police post. Ni watu najua kama wote kuwaona, naweza kuwa siwajui majina lakini watu najua wote, na mimi kama stylist kuna wenye mimi utengeneza, hata kuna wenye mimi unyoa. Niko traumatized, niko depressed. Unaona kutoka kwa nyumba kubai mkate hapo nje ina attract attention. Nimehama kwangu saa hii naishi na bro yangu, sababu hata sitaki mtu ajue kwenye naishi. Like najaribu sana nikae maisha ni kama ya kawaida.
Samuel moved out of his house because he felt unsafe, but he isn't out of danger yet. We visit him a few weeks later. He shows us that it still isn't safe for him to live freely. So where's the station?
Way up.
And where exactly were you assaulted, if you can point it out?
Now, you see right here, the Mabati fence that is there.
So behind there, yeah.
Behind the police station.
There's a car wash.
Yeah, at the gate of the car wash. Yeah, right there.
Okay. Samuel, shadow of the people who caused him harm, but in spite of the danger he faces, he's still seeking justice.
I'll call you later about
My name is Gilbert Mitulomware. I'm an advocate of the High Court.
Gilbert, a law firm that defends unlawfully accused people. His clients are typically the kind of people who will be arrested and disappear into the justice system.
There are about 51,000 people in Kenyan prisons. And of the 51,000, about 26,000 are remandees. So those are people who are innocent.
So
half. About 48% of the prison population in Kenya is remandees. That is people who have been sent to remand because they mostly can't afford bail. And many of them are unjustly accused. 68% of the offenses are usually petty offenses, so drunken, disorderly, lack of licenses, things like those. So I said, well, there's this group of people who are completely neglected. 75% of this population I'm talking about, of the 26,000, are people who essentially are between the ages of 18 and 35, are poorly educated. Many of the clients that we're taking on are people who have not gone past, say, standard 6 or 7 of primary school. Just a few have gone past high school, and even fewer have seen anything past into tertiary education. Where there's a big black gate with officers, just tell them you're going to Gilbert's office.
On this day, he's preparing to meet with Samuel Maina for the first time. Gilbert has volunteered to take on Samuel's case.
If you look at the malicious prosecution cases, the police abuse cases, when it's against powerful people, there is always an answer. If somebody is wealthy or has the political power, is well connected, they'll always find an answer. But people like Samuel, nobody is on their side and nobody fights for them. And these are the people that I spend my days fighting for. Welcome. You can have a seat over there.
They did come out to claim I was drunk, that I walked in after being beaten up by thugs, and that I did fall down and had my nose broken.
The reason why I picked Samuel, even though he doesn't fall squarely into a jazz mandate, is that Samuel is somebody who has nobody fighting for him. There was social media clamor about what happened to him. His picture was shared over and over and over. But this is July. The incident happened a couple of months ago. And you can see that he's now all alone. Where are all the people who are clamoring for him? The poor and downtrodden in Kenya are not dispensable. They are our brothers and sisters. They are part of this country.
When Gilbert says that the rich and powerful are often better served by Kenya's justice system, it isn't idle talk. Almost exactly a month after Samuel was attacked, this CCTV recording was posted online and soon went viral. It's early on June the 25th. This man is seen walking along an empty stretch of road. He's attacked by 2 people, one with a gun, the other with a knife. In about 10 seconds, they robbed him of his phone and bag.
The robbery that set social media alight took place here on Rose Avenue. In fact, it took place right over there, about 20 meters from where I'm standing. Rose Avenue is in the Kilimani area, home to embassies, businesses, and very plush residential homes. The middle class and the landlords generally tend to live in an area like this. Within 4 days of that robbery, the DCI had the names of the suspects. In fact, they even had their clothes that they were wearing on that day posted on social media. Very rare kind of policing that Kenyans applauded. But compare that to the assault of Samuel Maina, which happened months ago. He was assaulted right behind the Kahawa West police station. And to this day, in spite of the fact that he's taken this case to the Independent Police Oversight Authority, there are no suspects and there are no leads. Compare that with what happened here and the fact that where he was assaulted, it's a built-up area with a very busy thoroughfare. And there are multiple witnesses. Multiple witnesses are afraid to come forward.
Samuel is among a silent mass of Kenyans for whom justice is farther away the poorer you are. But Samuel is still alive and has the opportunity, no matter how slim, to pursue justice. It is the day of James's burial. It's almost as if the weather has read the mood of James's family. Because of restrictions on public gatherings, only a few people will travel from Nairobi to his home village, Nkobo, in Meru County, 300 kilometers away from the capital. When James's hearse arrives, everything is set into motion like clockwork. In the brief ceremony, his close relatives stress the fact that to them, James wasn't homeless. He had a diploma in automotive engineering and worked as an instructor at a technical training institute. When he met his death, his eulogy referred to him as being a hustler, a term in Kenya describing those for whom survival is struggle. Most importantly, he had a wife, Christine, and 3 children, Edwin, Martin, and Eunice. To them, he was a father and a breadwinner.
I was sure he loved us because kila time angekaa sana kama hajakuja kujua story ya shuleni. Angepitia kwanza mimi shuleni mali nilikuwa. Alafu sana anakuja anapitia mali brother yangu na sister yangu. Hiyo time walikuwa primary. Ya sando alikuwa angekosa kupitia sana huko shuleni.
Matumaini ya kupata haki. Kwa saa nyingine watu wanaangalia kama hakuna kupata haki. Unaona kama wewe kesi ya James itafuatiliwa hadi mwisho na haki itatendeka?
Naona itafuatiliwa. Niko na imani itafuatiliwa. Niko na imani na naomba Mungu tu ifuatiliwe. Tena tusiachiliwe tu na shida. Hata isipofuatiliwa mimi ndio nitateseka. Pia watoto watateseka na hata kusoma hawatasoma. Sasa sijui tutaishi maisha magani.
Speeches are all done within 20 minutes. A short, silent march to James's final resting place is all that's left to do. That, and for his family to say goodbye. Everyone here struggles to keep their composure. But the air is too thick with grief. One of the last photographs ever taken of James Moradi was taken at this spot. He was tossing soil into the grave of his late father, who passed away in 2015. 5 years later, and his wife and 3 children have had to do the same. The man who was introduced to Kenyans and indeed to the world as a homeless man shot in the wake of a curfew is now at rest. He's here at home. But beyond the gap that's been left by his absence is the gap and the gaping question about justice being done for James Moradi. Everyone is fine that I've spoken to have asked that he not be forgotten, that justice be done to him, and that his name does not sink below that invisible line into anonymity. Sad as this day was, it wouldn't be the last in a long line of deaths. Another day of violence, just 16 days after James was laid to rest. This time in Lesotho town, hundreds of kilometers away from the capital, in the Rift Valley. Lazarus Kiprono, a cobbler, was shot in the head, allegedly for not wearing a face mask. The small town exploded because it hadn't been the first time that the police had killed one of their own.
We are very much saddened by the killing of a citizen, a very innocent citizen. And this is the second time when an individual is cut down by a police officer.
2 other men were killed on this day as the police fired directly at them. In the case of Lesotho, 1 officer is facing murder charges. But to the police, these are just a few bad apples.
Some of these policemen are very young and they are still very erratic. They can easily get drunk with the little power they have and do very wrong things. So
Kenya's Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, is a man who must work with the police to secure convictions. But even he smells the rot in the force.
I would actually equate it to, rotting fish. not apples. Don't smell that bad when they're rotten, but the fish is pretty bad, and that's what is happening with the police. But it's not an excuse. Still, we're still saying that we have to deal with those individuals. The other day, I was reading a comment and someone saying, "What if an airline? I think it was an American airline. What if an American airline would say we have a few bad pilots?"
It isn't just him who believes that the force needs cleaning up. We sat down with a police officer who's been on the beat during the COVID-19 period. He spoke to us on condition of anonymity.
Inategemea na mtu. Hakuna siku senior atakwambia ukienda nje upige raia. Lakini sasa hii kupiga raia, kuna askari wengine wanakuanga na hiyo nyama tu kutoka rohoni mwao. Lakini sasa hiyo si askari wote wabaya. Kuna wale wengine pia kuna hiyo nyama. Askari wote wafanana, lakini wengi ripoti ya askari ile maisha wanapitia pale kwa kiganjo kuangalia kuleta wanakwanga umefunzwa kinyama sana. Hizo tunapitianga mambo mingi sana ya shida huko ndani wakati wa training. Unapata hakuna kulala, mnapitia ndani ya karabat. Hiyo ndio obstacle crossing, mnapitia ndani ya miipa. Sasa ukitoka pale, wengine wanaweza kuwa na ile mauchungu, lakini huko ndani utaambiwa si umetreniwa na unyama, ukifika nje na huko mnyama hivyo. Lakini ile mtu mwenyewe mahali imekuweka, unatoka nje ukiwa akili yako kabisa ile imebadilika.
The investigation into James's killing doesn't have to end with his burial, because there is a crucial lead that hasn't yet been followed up on. According to James's post-mortem, he was hit by 3 bullets. One went through his upper thigh, the other through his stomach. These 2 bullets went through him and were never retrieved from the scene of his murder. The third hit James in the rib. This bullet head was lodged in one of his ribs. A confidential source close to the investigation into James's murder confirmed that the bullet head was taken for a ballistics examination, and the results are telling. According to the examination, the bullet head was consistent with bullets either from a G3 rifle or an AK-47 rifle. Both of these types of rifles are used by Kenya's police force. The ballistics report also corroborates accounts of people who were on the scene moments after James was shot to death. And the police station covering the area where James was killed is the Pangani police station. We called the acting station commander to confirm whether officers from his station were deployed in that area, but he was unwilling to respond.
Were officers from Pangani, are they usually sent into that area, 3C, to enforce curfew?
What I know,
yes.
I don't know why you are specific. What I know, curfew orders is everywhere in Kenya.
I understand
There's
that.
no place which is exempted.
I understand that. I'm trying to figure out whether there were officers.
I cannot confirm that one.
Yes.
That one I cannot confirm.
Where would I be able to get that confirmation?
From the hospital.
In his case, there seems to be a finger pointing straight at the police. In his meeting with Gilbert, Samuel said that 12 days after his attack, he was approached by someone from the Kahawa West police station.
They did reach out to me to give me some kind of compensation for the fact that I had been injured and that I was not working and that I had incurred so much loss at the hospital. Yeah. Of which whomever was proposing to me whatever he did there, of which back then I had not talked to whomever I talked to and told me about the details of the wound and how it was healing and whatever, is the same guy that I suspect could have been the one who hit me.
Out there is a witness who saw the attack on Samuel, but he's unwilling to come forward because he risks being targeted by the police. The COVID-19 pandemic showed Kenya's police service at its worst. It is no secret, even in the halls of government, that Kenya faces a serious problem, one with roots in its colonial past.
What frustrates you most about the things that you find that have linkages directly to colonialism?
I think without ruffling feathers, I think the police is one such outfit. Hopefully, we'll be able to change it to reflect.
Can a force trained into violence come to terms with its past before the public loses its patience?
Alan, it's not one day. It happened yesterday. It happened yesterday. The burning of the OCS house is an indicator of things to come. In Lesos, the killing of the chief in Meru, the killing of a police sergeant in Kamukuywa, that is in Bungoma, the killing of a police sergeant in Endebes, that is in Trans Nzoia. The people are now hitting back.
It isn't too far off an assumption to make.
Please, again. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
All across the world, systems that have oppressed poor populations and minorities are being challenged. Will it happen in Kenya? Maybe it already is.
Wakenya! United shall never be defeated. Wamama! United shall never be defeated. Vijana! United shall never be defeated. Madare! United shall never be defeated. Abibo! United shall never be defeated. Stop killing us! Stop killing us! Stop beating us! Stop beating us! Stop killing us! Stop killing us! Stop killing us!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. And that was such a heart-wrenching piece. And before we start, I'd like to, first of all, introduce my panel. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Danish Odongo. I'm a journalist, and I'll be moderating this session right now. With me today, I'm joined by Demas Kiprono from Amnesty International. You can wave to the audience, Demas. Of course, we have Hussein Khalid, Haki Africa. You all know what he does, the amazing work that he does. We have Asha Jafar, from a community activist from Kibra. Hey, Asha. We have got Perpetua Kariuki. We call her Pesh from Kayole Social Justice Center. Hi, Pesh. And then we have Faith Kasina, who's the Kayole Community Justice Center coordinator. She'll be joining us shortly. I think she's here. Anyway, just diving right into it. I'll start with you, Pesh. This documentary is not something that is just a video. You have lived through it. Your family has paid a heavy price. That's how you ended up being an activist with the Kayole Social Justice, Social Justice Center. Briefly, in like a minute, would you kindly tell us your journey into the social justice movement and the personal loss that you suffered and your family suffered?
Thank you, Danish. Good morning. I lost my brother in 2015 through extrajudicial execution. By then, Kayole was being known for Gaza cases, and apparently police were killing every young man. Particularly, they will judge you by how you look, by how you walk. So it was so traumatizing to the community, and apparently the community had at that time normalized this death. Like maybe a neighbor know you very well, they know you where you work, they know where you go to school, but because you were killed by police, they will probably think that probably he was a thief. And they thought that because you're a thief, you deserve to die. So when I experienced it firsthand by losing my brother, we came together as friends, me, Faith Kasina, and my fellow comrades from Kayole, and we decided to start a justice center and start documenting these stories, because criminalization of poverty and criminalization of youth in informal settlement was normal. So we decided to be documenting these cases, and so far we have seen changes. Little changes, yes, but at least this story, the community have changed their mindset about police killing youth. Yes.
I'd just like to tell the audience that Pesh's brother was actually murdered in their house by the police through extrajudicial means. But before we go on, Demas, you've worked in this sector for a while. I just want to know the kind of reaction that that documentary has shown. We're talking about over 95, lives that were lost, documented by missing voices. We're talking about really extreme cases of brutality during a pandemic. What's going on? How did that documentary make you feel?
Well, the documentary was difficult to watch, and I congratulate John-Allan for an African Uncensored the thorough work that they did. But the documentary represents just a tip of the iceberg of what has been happening throughout this period. Victims range from rural folk, people living in informal settlements, children, and even old people. And in one occasion, even a retired police officer was killed by the police. This represents basically the challenge that police reforms have not been able to achieve since 2010, when we passed a new constitution that was supposed to inculcate police accountability, professionalism, and respect for human rights. Many organizations, many institutions were formed basically to bring about this police accountability, from the Independent Police Oversight Authority to the National Police Service Commission to deal with the human resource aspect, to the Internal Affairs Unit within the police itself, to an independent Inspector General. But all these years on, you realize that the independence of the Inspector General has been clawed back. The Inspector General is now a direct appointee of the President, as opposed to when it was a fair and a competitive process. You find that the Inspector General is not an account holder, so the police itself is not a functionally, financially, and operationally independent body. Be that as it may, the colonial past cannot be ignored. The fact that poorer areas are over-policed, that the police feel that they can do anything to poorer people who have challenges in access to justice. These are the same areas that have been deprived of social and economic opportunities. And because of a mix of this, the middle class and the people who are more well-to-do have not gotten that urgency and that feeling that something needs to change. Because often you would hear people excuse police violence for, but you know that area is quite violent. The robberies, how would you feel if you've ever been robbed? Yet we abandon and forget that this is a country that's supposed to be a country that obeys the rule of law, whereby your innocence or guilt is decided by a court of law, and where the law binds also the law enforcement officers. But as you've seen, they operate as if they are law unto themselves. So it is a mix of unfortunate events. It's a mix of our past and our failure to understand that that this needs to change. But I must emphasize that the police violence usually goes up during politically heated moments. It usually goes up, as you've seen now, during crises like the coronavirus pandemic. And this is because the state machinery uses the police as perhaps a force that is supposed to protect and maintain the regime, as opposed to the force that is supposed to protect and maintain the sovereign people of Kenya, supposed to protect the people of Kenya. So that our policing structure is more centered around the executive and maintaining it, and the executive also really requires the acquiescence of the middle class for its legitimacy. as opposed to now protecting the rule of law as it's supposed to be. And I think we can continue discussing that, because I also wanted to mention that ideally the police should be community driven and supported with intelligence and information gathering, as opposed to a punitive force that draws its power from really no legitimate place and makes people suffer. One thing that really has not come out of the documentary is the fact that the coronavirus period also came with increased extortion of the very people that most of the violence were meted against. So if you're found without a mask, you are arrested, and the only way for you to avoid forced quarantine is to give out money. So it's a mix of injustices geared at the most vulnerable. Yet we ignore that even something like the NYS scams, the loss of billions, these billions are supposed to go to these groups to provide jobs and opportunities. The people who stole these billions are not in prison, and you'd even find that perhaps even the ones who are being found a little culpable are not the masterminds, because I think that's the gist.
All right. Thank you so much, Demas, actually, for giving such a deep context into this conversation. And I'd like to bring in Hussein Khalid, who leads Haki Africa. And I'm just going to pick that question right there from Demas. Why is justice so expensive for the poor? Police officers who are accused of killing baby Pendo are yet to be arrested, even though an inquest recommended that their prosecution to be done. Of course, there's Vita's family. We have got series and series of unresolved police murder cases. Hussein, why is justice so expensive for the poor? 1, 2, and why is it that the police who are paid by taxpayers brutalize the very same people who pay their bills? Why is there such disdain for the same people who pay their bills and buy their bullets and make sure that they have that ability to be brutal the way they are? Where is this attitude coming from, apart from the colonial bit of it? Yeah, go on.
Thank you, Danish, and I think that's a very important question that you've posed, and it's something that Kenyans need to reflect on, because what we are seeing in the documentary by Africa Uncensored basically portrays the uncouth police service that we have in our country. It's very sad to see such kinds of atrocities happening in this time and era in a country that boasts democratic and respecting human rights and the rule of law. And I think for me, it all boils down to impunity. I agree with the documentary by Africa Uncensored that yes, our police service has had a very negative colonial past. I agree that we have a bad training system that's happening, that's ongoing at Kiganjo. But I don't think these are excuses that we should entertain and allow at this time when the police are committing human rights violations. At the end of the day, you are a human being. When you pick up the gun and you shoot at someone, that should clearly tell you there is something wrong. The man we saw hiding behind a pile of stones, this police officer who was in the navy blue, in the jacket, I mean, you can't blame that on a colonial past. You are not even born. Your father was not even born at that time, you know? I agree that culture is passed from one generation to another, but we cannot hide behind that. I think we, as a country, have shielded individual officers from taking personal responsibility. Senior police officers have shielded units and troops that engage in human rights violations, and it is impunity that has continued to cause Kenyans so much suffering at the hands of the police service. We every day ask ourselves, what is the problem? But I think if those in authority, those in power, including the executive, would stand firm and call a spade and say, look, yes, we know we have a few bad fish or apples, whatever we want to call them, majority of the police service are doing well, then that needs to translate into action. The Baby Pendo case that you're referring to, the evidence is out there. Everyone knows what happens. In Mombasa, just the other month, a 4-year-old was shot in the head. A 6-year-old boy was also shot. A 7 months pregnant woman was shot and the fetus died in the stomach. Yet, we are still hiding behind trainings and a colonial past. Yes, it's true that we need to change that, but I think at the end of the day, we have to hold those in authority responsible for the atrocities committed by the juniors under them. If they don't take action, if we don't see the officer responsible for the death of Baby Pendo, then we should go for the Inspector General because he has a duty, he has a responsibility. IPOA has to take action. The executive from Matiang'i as the CS Interior and the president himself. I mean, look at the example of Yasin Moyo, who was shot in his home, you know, and we can't just excuse that and say it's the training and a colonial legacy, you know, full of a negative past. I think time has come for us to stop making excuses for the police, to hold them responsible and accountable for their action if we really want to see the police service changing.
Thank you so much, Hussein. And I like that because sometimes we keep on excusing bad behavior in the name of colonial legacy, or it's been like that since independence. But yes, we agree there's a past, but we cannot allow that past to hold us to this dark place where 4-month-old babies are murdered, where pregnant women are killed. I think that is something that we shouldn't allow. And I'd like now to invite Faith Kasina, who is the coordinator of Kayole Social Justice Center. Faith, I know what happened. You know, you were on the limelight in 2018. Of course, you spoke during the Sabasaba March for Our Lives. Your own life was at risk. I remember I met you in a matatu in Kayole, and you had even changed your hairstyle because of this. Now, somebody is asking here, Stephen Okwan, that I have had enough of police brutality. What can I do next? I want to do something to end this mess. Now, I'd like you just to tell the audience slightly your story. How did you end up in this space? And at what point did you say, enough with helplessness, enough with all these excuses, I'm going to do something about police execution that has claimed many of my friends, people I knew, and they're no longer around? Faith.
Yes, Danish.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go on. Go on. Did you get the question? Did you get the question? Faith, did you get the question? Okay. Yeah,
good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes. No, I'm okay. So I hear Stephen. Yes, sure, I did.
Okay. I think as Faith is fixing that, Asha, I'd like to come to you. You have also the same story, you know, brutality, and, you know, you've actually been standing up. I've seen a lot of work you're doing online, you know, mobilizing the community, even though in moments when you yourself have faced police brutality. We'd like to hear your story, but also we'd like to see how then did you change from that narrative that I'm helpless to now what you're doing, the amazing work that you're doing in Kibra, mobilizing food and all this stuff that you're doing, the amazing work you're doing in Kibra.
Thank you. I think for me it was like for me how I think met the police was in March. I was supplying food at that particular day, and it was raining, so I got home like a bit late. It was like 30 minutes late. Curfew was 7 p.m. and I was getting home at around 7:30. So I met the police actually like just around our gate. And, you know, before even asking questions and stuff like that, they started attacking me from like I was on top of a piki, and they started hitting me while I was seated on the piki. So it was like, for me, even like when people say that, oh, you know, if you're a journalist or if you're a community worker, you are allowed to actually like roam around for a few minutes if you're doing community work. But then what people don't understand is once the police are down here, like especially in the informal sector, or not in informal sector, in the informal settlements, they assume that everyone is I don't know, like a criminal or something. So they don't actually ask you what you're doing, or what you like, what has kept you out at night and stuff like that. So for me, like that's how like I was yeah, I faced like police brutality. And I think for me is I took it like the positive way. It's because I was doing good for my community at that particular time. So what I did is we just continued with giving food. But then the thing is, we had to go to like to our local MP and tell him like this and this should not happen at a particular time like this, because even like you're beating people up, and it's like Mama Mboga needs to save that 30 minutes, maybe like she's waiting for like 20 I don't know, 20 shillings more so that she can get oil, or like 10 shillings more, or maybe she was working because she could not afford transportation, bus transportation and stuff. Because like people, like I don't know, like if the police are ever taught like it's different economies, or down here in Kibera, people like how life is very different from Karen and other places. So if you're told curfew 7 p.m., your boss tells you, clean the house up until 6, you can take the bus. But most of these people actually don't take buses and stuff like that. So they work on industrial area, they work from Westlands where their house helps and stuff like that. So once the police they see anyone at 7 p.m., it's like you hit anyone, you don't even care about it. And even like the colonial connection of like the police being taught protecting the white affluent communities and leaving the community, I feel like it has gone through like so many generations, and I feel like it's something that needs to end. Because then it's like when you're talking about decolonizing ourselves, when you're talking about gaining independence, we're supposed to be getting rid of the colonial mindsets and things like that. We're supposed to be owning like Kenyan narratives and Kenyans way of operating. And even like for me, like my understanding is most people go like to the police voices. Most of them are even taken from some of these informal settlements, but then once they get there, they get like fed with so much hate and anger that it's unbelievable. Like for me, like the level of police brutality I witnessed during I think the period of March to around July was, and like it was crazy, it was intense. Like it was like they were getting into people's house, even at some point hitting people, insulting people and stuff like that. So for me, like that the understanding for me, like, even I felt like there was a misunderstanding of like what was the police role during the curfew period. Was it to make sure that everyone gets home safe and I don't know, like helping people and stuff like that, or was it like treating people like criminal, like during the post-election violence that we experienced in Kibera in the previous year? So for me, I felt like it was similar cases. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Asha. Before I come back to Demas, Hussein, people are asking, this whole accountability conversation imeoza. That's Tutu Apale saying on the comments right there. They're saying, how can you make someone who has a gun accountable? I know that Haki Africa and you belong to the Police Reforms Working Group. Perhaps you could tell us, what is the Police Reforms Working Group doing and what have they done so far? Because sometimes when we hear stories of progress, it may give us the hope to continue believing that it is possible to actually hold the police accountable. So 1, 2, why I mean, is there what's the correlation between police brutality and the social class? Why is it more prevalent in the informal settlements than it is in high-end neighborhoods? You've seen that documentary. In Kilimani, a pub was actually opened past curfew hours, but then in the slums you just need to be outside at the wrong place, like Yasin Moyo, and a bullet into you. So Hussein, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get any of that. You're breaking up. Kindly
can you hear me now? Am I better now? Can you hear me now? I'm asking.
Yes.
There's a question by Tulu Apale that this talk of accountability imeoza, it's tired. Secondly, they're saying, how can you make someone who has a gun accountable? You belong, and Haki Africa belongs to the Police Reforms Working Group. I'd like you to tell us some of the achievements the working group has made and why it's important for us to amplify the progress that the working group is making and many other dynamic voices that work in this space. Secondly, the correlation between social class and police brutality. Why is it that the police are more brutal to the poor Why? Why? The poor are already dealing with many issues. Why is the police more brutal to them than any other members of the community?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think accountability comes after the fact. It doesn't come during. And when we're talking of accountability, we're saying when an officer engages in any criminal, because it is criminal to kill against contrary to the Constitution. Yes, they are required to use reasonable force, but when they use excessive force, it's criminal, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal. So accountability comes after the fact. So when a person is holding a gun, there is nothing stronger than the law. The law is much stronger, is more powerful than the gun. And if we stand together as a people and say no, and we've seen this in action. I think during this year's Sabasaba Day March, we saw Wanjira, standing up for her rights and speaking very boldly and saying, if we lose our fear, they lose their power. And that's exactly what Kenyans need to know and understand, that this feeling of helplessness, where we feel there is nothing that we can do, this is what emboldens the police to continue violating our rights. When they know that the people will stand up, that people will demand accountability, that we will ask that they be arrested and be jailed, and that they face the full wrath of the law, then they will stop engaging in these atrocities. But if we continue lamenting, complaining, and saying, look, these people have guns, we don't have anything, we will continue playing into their games. So I think it's about time Kenyans change their attitude to know that the police work for us. They are meant to ensure we have security. They are not supposed to be a source of insecurity in themselves. Kenya is not a police state. And this is the message that Kenyans have to get through to their minds and believe that they are more powerful than anyone else. The Constitution is very clear that the sovereignty belongs to the people. And in the chapter on national security, it is very clear that national security organs are subject to civilian authority. So the moment we realize and understand these constitutional provisions, the better for all of us.
On the issue of the police reforms working group, we'd like to hear some of the progress that is being made there. No, for that we say it's possible, actually. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I missed that. Yes, Haki Africa is a member of the police reforms working group, and I believe we have made huge strides in terms of trying to ensure that the police force is changed and to give birth to a police service, because we feel so far we are not yet there. We have engaged those in authority. We've had meetings with, like the cabinet secretary, Dr. Matiang'i, and impressed on him the need to ensure that he oversees these police reforms. So far, we've received very good responses from the cabinet secretary. He has assured the police reforms working group that there will be changes. We have seen various members of the police reforms working group, like IMLU, Amnesty International, and others engaging the police, even in their trainings. We've had CSOs and members going to Kiganjo to introduce the human rights-based approach, which is anchored on Article 29 of the Constitution of Kenya. I think of late you have seen this week, barely yesterday and the day before, we have gone to court to demand that the police be held accountable for atrocities that were recorded and documented during the COVID-19 pandemic. Because this matter is in court, definitely I can't discuss the merits of the case because that will be sub judice. But we are doing everything we can to try and hold the police accountable for their actions.
Thank you so much, Hussein. Demas, I'd like to bring you in just before I bring in Faith, Kasina, and Pesh, who are now going to be telling us more about what they're doing on the ground to actually, bring in police accountability. There are two questions I'd like to know. In terms of cases that are being taken to IPOA, how successful has it been since the Independent Policing Oversight Authority was established? Because that is one body that was meant to do, accountability. Secondly, just within the police service, of course, we know they do ballistics and they do, postmortem and all this sort of stuff. How possible is it that the very same people who do atrocities are the ones who are given the power to investigate themselves? And of course, how realistic is that? Maybe do we need to strengthen these institutions a bit? IPOA, this sort of number we're talking about, BBI, whatever, if at all it were to come, are we likely to push for more strengthening of these independent institutions like IPOA, Demas?
Since IPOA was set up, there have been quite some cases that have been successfully taken to court where police officers have been found guilty and have been sentenced to various levels of terms, including life imprisonment. There was a famous case of an OCS who was found guilty of torturing and killing a person who had been arrested. And there's a case of Kwekwe, a baby Kwekwe, who was killed in the coast. And two officers were found guilty, and they are currently serving prison time. There's also a case in Githurai where an officer had killed siblings, two people. And the interesting thing about that case is that members of the public came out to protest his arrest and sentencing because they felt that he was bringing back security in that area, which is a very important thing that we need to tackle. That feeling by members of the public that the justice system does not work, so that sometimes they justify extrajudicial means to identify and punish those who they deem to be criminal elements. Yeah, so there have been a number of cases, but clearly IPOA also has received quite a number of complaints. I think by now we're talking about 10,000 complaints, as opposed to a conviction rate of about 10 to 15 individuals. So you see that disparity. However, there's also another level of accountability, which is the Internal Affairs Unit and the National Police Service Commission, who are supposed to also receive complaints and deal with errant police officers. We do not have the number of people that have been punished through that mechanism, but civil society is concerned about the current behavior of the National Police Service Commission, which just last September pardoned 300 officers who had been found unsuitable to hold office by the previous commission under Kabiruti. So basically, they said we don't want to give officers stress, let them come back, let them work. That sends a very bad signal that the system is with us and we can do anything, and really goes against the grain of what we have been trying to do all these years. The police vetting process was a very expensive affair. It took a lot of time and exposed a lot of rot. As you remember, there was an officer who had not touched his salary for years, and there's another one who had not been deployed for years and was just going to the headquarters to sit down for years. And we need that knowledge, and we need that knowledge in order to improve our systems. However, there are other accountability mechanisms that were set up by Parliament that have not been fully realized. Let me give you an example. We have a National Coroner Service Act that is supposed to do forensic and evidence collection and analysis in suspicious cases of death. The Coroner Service Act was passed in 2017. It has not been commenced right now. We have the Victims Protection Act, although some elements of it have been implemented. The clauses on compensation and a victims fund have not been implemented. There is the the Legal Aid Act that is actually supposed now to act as a bridge for those people who come from backgrounds that cannot afford legal services. That has not been commenced at all. So you find that still the people in poorer areas find that they cannot access justice. And the class issue really comes into issues of information, access to information, access to justice, and freedom of expression to go out there and say this is wrong and this is happening to us. And that might be the challenge going on. But not to speak for the social justice centers, but the social justice centers have come in as a very important gap where members of the community themselves are documenting, are engaging duty bearers to improve situations in their own areas. So it's not an up-down approach. It is members of the public seeking justice, and this really goes in accordance with the principles of community policing, which is anchored under the Constitution. So generally, the government and Parliament need to really push for the full implementation of these laws. With regard to these oversight bodies, they also need more funding and more presence in the machinery, where they are not overwhelmed by the number of the cases, so that they can fully investigate and help the DPP to prosecute these cases of errant deaths. As we speak, we've seen that the case of Yasin Moyo is in court. We've seen the case of Carlton Maina is in court. So there are strides that are being made, although we have not reached where we want to be.
Thank you, Demas, for that comprehensive background. Faith, Kasina, and Pesh. Can you hear me now? I need you guys to wave if you're hearing me. Absolutely. All right, Faith. I was saying that in 2018, just after your famous Saba Saba speech, where you decried police brutality, your life was at risk. I met you in a matatu in Kayole, and you changed your hair and you're really afraid, Yet that did not deter you from going ahead to tirelessly work in the Kayole Community Social Justice Center. Somebody here is saying that they are tired of police brutality. How then can you, through your story, tell us briefly your story, and also tell them what practical things you guys are doing through the Social Justice Center that then are giving power to those who are deemed weak, or those who are deemed voiceless? Why they don't have a voice yet? They have a voice, it's just that it's subdued. I'd like you to encourage somebody by telling them your journey and that. And then Pesh, together with Faith, you guys were friends, and of course you are facing the same challenges. I'd like you also to draw into quote unquote this middle class, or people who are coming from other places. How then have you guys managed to unite struggles, to bring them together? The stories of Kayole are not as different from the stories in, say, parts of Likoni in Mombasa, that the stories in Likoni are not so different from Manyata in Kisumu. You guys have the next few minutes to do that. Faith, start.
Thank you so much, Danish. Yes, I started as an activist in 2017, but I joined the Social Justice Centers movement in 2018. But the journey has not been so easy. It has seen me arrested, stayed in a cell for several times. I think there's a time you even came to pick me up, Danish. At the Social Justice Centers, what we do, we document these cases. I hear Stephen when he says that he's tired and he really wants to be part of the change. But then again, you realize, but you cannot do much alone. You have to come together join other people who have the same passion as you and who are doing the same work. Because again, when you work alone, the more riskier it is, and also you need to work with people to strengthen your voice. You don't have to be alone, because again, all the threats will be directed to you. At the social justice centers, we document these cases and then we refer them to organizations like Amnesty, International Justice Mission, Africa Justice and Restoration Trust, that help us to find justice for these victims, because again, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the lawyers on board, but then these organizations have the capacity. So we bring them on board where we partner to find justice for these victims.
Faith, go on. You really just guzzled your story and you did not tell us more about how you came into this and even your 2018 experience at the Sabasaba March for Our Lives. Don't be modest here. Just tell us your story.
Okay, yes. So I joined in 2018 the social justice centers. That's after the Gaza saga, where youths were getting killed in Kayole, in Madare, in Dendora, all in the name of their Gaza criminals, all that. But then again, looking at all that, there were so many innocent youths that were also getting killed. And again, no one was actually talking about it, because we had normalized these killings in the name of their thieves and they deserve to be killed. Again, I lost lots of friends. All my life I've lived in Kayole. I went to school in Kayole. So I lost lots of friends, my classmates, my neighbors. So I just realized that we cannot keep normalizing these things. We had people who are victims, and they were also looking to a space where they can come together and voice these things. They wanted a space where they can come together and we talk about these things and we find a way of seeking justice. So as we came together and formed the Kayole Community Justice Center, which was among the first people to form the Justice Centers Working Group. I was arrested after in 2019, after we gave us a speech at Kamkunji grounds. We were demanding for answers about Rashid. Rashid is a very notorious killer cop, and in every area we have these killer cops. They're known by name, you know. But then we were asking, why is it that nothing is being done about these killer cops? Like we know in Kayole there is Omosh, there is Ngare, in Kamkunji there is Benteke, in Mulango Kubwa Madare there is Rashid. He's killed people. There is people know him. So where is it that nothing totally is really being done about these killer cops? Again, we were also asking if all the time the National Police Service keeps saying they're not part of the police service, they don't know them. So is it that in the informal settlements you're being killed by serial killers? Or what is it? What's really happening? Because we really wanted answers. So after that, most of us were arrested in Kiamaiko at Huruma police station. The same thing that happened this year again when we were out during the Sabasaba March for Our Lives. We were not even given time to reach to town. We were arrested even before, because Kayole is the one that starts this march. So when we started in Kayole, we were arrested even before we could reach to roundabouts where we meet with Dendora. So it's been a tough journey asking for answers. But then again, we say we are not going to relent because we really need answers and we need to live a dignified life as no matter where we come from. It's we are poor, but then we need to decriminalize poverty. We need to decriminalize youth, because youth, as long as you're a youth in the informal settlements, people view you as a criminal. There's a dialogue we had with our police officers, and they told us the first thing they see when they see youth is that they are criminals. So it's our job to actually show them that we are not. So how am I? I'm already guilty, so it's my job to prove that I'm not guilty. That's not how we are going to live in our informal settlements. We are poor, but we deserve dignity.
Oh, thank you so much. We are poor, but we deserve dignity. Pesh,
Yes.
you belong to this whole social justice working group, and always when we go to Kudo, wherever we meet, there's always this conversation of connecting struggles. I'd like you to expound more about that and how you plus the Kayole Community Social Justice Center is connecting struggles with other informal settlements who are facing the same challenges, but they're facing them at different times.
Yes. Thank you again. So the Social Justice Center's working group has brought a lot of light, especially in the Justice Center. Justice sector. So connecting the struggle, we are all victims of police brutality, whether you're in formal settlement or you're in the coast or you're in Kakamega, wherever you are. So there's this notion of police profiling. You see, if you are in a Mercedes Benz or you are in a beautiful car, you'll be treated with dignity by the police. But once you look like a poor or someone who doesn't have money, they will definitely treat you differently with a lot of brutality, or maybe talk to you badly, you see, with a lot of abuses. But the social justice working group have brought together all these sectors from the whole of our country, and we have connected this struggle so that the police are profiling people wrongly and judging from your looks and treating you without even thinking, or without thinking that we are serving the same, they are serving the same people, because whether you are from the informal settlement or you're from the suburbs, you are still a Kenyan and you deserve dignity from them. Yeah.
Right. Asha, I'd like to bring you back. I don't know, are we together, Asha?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, the police are usually very quick to change narratives, brand people. And the famous story is the story of Bonoko. This Bonoko gun that they keep on putting. You're a storyteller, and I follow your work on Twitter. As storytellers, but also as people who believe in recording history as it happens, what do you think we can do also to just counter police narrative, so that then we are able to have the narrative that how it happened?
For me, I think how I've seen it in Kibera is immediately there's a police brutality, is we've asked every single person to go to the local journalists around Kibera. So like either you get someone that will tell you a story without malice, things like that, or you get someone that will honestly like write your story in a way that they will not be corrupted, or if you call someone from like the Kenyan media house, they'll not be able to tell the story fully, because they're afraid of things like getting arrested and things like that. That's how we have trained activists in Kibera, is they look for people like us who can get on Twitter in microseconds and just tweet what has happened. And also we have to also counter it, is to not be like the lady said, do not be afraid of the police, because for us it's also standing up for yourself. Immediately what happened, immediately I was attacked by the police, I made it clear up, I was not even afraid. I told them you back, we'll have to pay one day for what you guys are doing. And for me, it was getting the news because being quiet about police brutality is the reason why we still have it 50 years after getting independence. So for me, also a way of countering it, it's speaking out and not being afraid, because the thing, I don't the worst thing they can do to you is kill you. But if you, at least if you speak out, the next person, if they kill Asha, because as they say, you can kill the person, but the mindset or the revolutionary mindset will still be there. I have other people who actually think like me. So it's also speaking out, having people, and also not being afraid. And also being up for yourself, because at the end of the day, because for me, I was told to go to the police, and I said, how can you go to the same body that discriminate you, or the same people that actually hit you? So for me, I refused to go to the police, and I looked for other avenues of speaking about the police brutality. And also I think Amnesty International has a way of you can report police brutality and stuff like that. So yeah, if it's knowing all these channels and stuff but also for me, it's all activists being together, because I remember when I got attacked and I tweeted it, all the activists that I knew came to rescue me or to help. like editor, connected me to someone from Amnesty. I was told I was given a contact of like a lawyer who's in charge of police brutality. Like so many channels of like getting help and speaking out to like different people, which like already we have these platforms. It's just that emphasizing them more, and also like because these informal settlements, most people are not aware of. So for me, like I would say, like another way of getting this to know is like having community outreaches, like organizations that are actually focusing on police brutality to actually come here and speak the language of the people and make them understand. Because the always like the biggest in Kibera is, yes, there's police brutality, but there's such a big fear of the police. Every time anyone, like even like kids, when they see a police officer, they assume they're gonna kill me, they're gonna, and stuff like that. They don't think of safety, they don't think of security. It always goes to bad things. So like I feel like also like we need to have like outreaches down here where like police brutality is immense, and talking to people about the ways they report, protect themselves, not the traditional way of reporting like criminals going to the police and stuff like that. If there are other avenues where you can actually trust it, I feel like it will work more for Kibera. I feel like also some of these forums have in like hotels and stuff like that. And most people, like most of the time, these people are cut out of discussion, and we are the people that actually most of the time. And for me, like this is the first time that I faced police brutality. There are so many people that have faced it like 5 times, 6 times, and it has been normalized. When I was talking about my experience, a lot of people are laughing, and it's not like they're laughing at me. It's just that it's a normal thing right now. That oh, you got beaten by the police, oh yeah, and then they just make a joke out of it. And it's not something that's it's supposed to be fun. It's actually something that is supposed to be sad. So it's also like people actually being taught that you do not deserve to be treated like that, because that is the problem with people in small settlements. Like people have mistreated you so much that you start to believe that this is should be treated. So once people get empowered mentally to actually believe that these people are not supposed to treat me like that, I'm so like we'll have a revolution one day of like people standing up for themselves and stuff like that.
A revolution. Thank you so much, Hussein. I'd like to bring you back. There's a lot of question about the curriculum that is used to train the police. So Jackson Obare asks, do we need then to have a change in a curriculum for police training? Will this change relate to the citizens, as some of them see them as beasts, trigger happy force? That's one from Jackson. But even if you go to the comments, literally there's a whole lot of questions about this curriculum. Khalid, what do you know about this curriculum, and are there progress? Are we making any progress towards changing it towards becoming a service rather than a force? Yeah.
Yes, Danish. Let me first of all just emphasize that definitely we need to look into the curriculum. It's something that as a country we cannot ignore. It's a process that all our police officers go through. So we must ensure that that key process is respectful of our rights. It takes care of our integrity, our dignity, and so I fully support the revision of the curriculum to make it responsive to our needs as Kenyans. But also, as we say that, and maybe this can also be factored in the revision that we will make, we must instill a sense of humanity in our police officers. I think that is what is lacking. And we saw in the video the officer who was referring to such rigorous training, quote unquote inhuman training, that then dehumanizes our police officers. So yes, we have to look into this. We have to make sure that the police officers actually taken through a process that makes them understand more how to address issues from a human rights perspective as opposed to dealing with civilians as criminals, because that's the problem. In Kenya, we have a deficit of trust, where citizens view police officers as corrupt, as people who are out there to harass them, and individuals who have no positive intention towards them. And on the other side, the police view every citizen as a potential criminal, someone who might just turn against them at any time. So that deficit in trust we need to address. We need to narrow the gap between communities and the police. We want people to be able to run to police officers when they have problems, not run away from them. And I think the only way we can do that is by ensuring that our police officers wear a human face and are not, subject of torture and harassment. And for me, it's more than just the curriculum itself. If we want to achieve that, we have to look at, for instance, issues to do with employment service. We have to look at their remuneration. We are now being told that police officers are supposed to live within communities. If you look at the house allowances that are being given, very low. If you look at the uniform issue, apparently now they're supposed to buy these uniforms themselves. So I think there's more than just the curriculum. I agree curriculum is a key and crucial document that we need to look at and make sure, and I think maybe even bring it out to the public. Let the common mwananchi, the Wanjiku, also contribute to the curriculum so that we can understand exactly what the police go through when they're undergoing the training. And I think by doing so, then we should be able to begin the process of realizing change in our police service.
Just before you go off, Khalid, you've raised a very important point, and perhaps I'd request Augustine and Catherine that next, it would be good to have a cop here to answer some of these questions. Perhaps, do you think it's time for us to look into the trauma and the mental health of our police officers? Because perhaps this training that they go through in Kiganjo is meant to traumatize them and to turn them into, these beasts. Do you think maybe perhaps we need to, as a sector, we may need to start asking questions about the welfare of the police as an act of self-preservation for us as the citizens? Hussein.
Without a doubt, Danish, definitely we need to look at that. The mental health of our officers is wanting, and we've seen this in many cases where police officers have engaged in criminal acts against their own families, their wives, their children, and to an extent of even committing suicide. So yes, the mental health, the welfare of our officers needs to take center stage. We need to start asking questions. How are our police being treated? What kind of employment packages are they being given? And these are issues that are very key if we truly want to ensure that this police service responds positively to wananchi. And also we have to look at the law, because there are many areas, even in the constitution, where police service cannot speak for themselves. For instance, in the constitution, they cannot go on strike. They cannot engage in, industrial action. Yes, so while we agree that there's, there's some truth in that, but we also need to make sure when they're disgruntled, when they feel that they're not getting the proper pay, then there should be mechanisms for them to be able to address those issues. And I think it is only by addressing their welfare will we be able also to get them to understand why we want them to operate in a certain manner. If we don't humanize them from their employment conditions, then they will be dehumanized even when they're dealing with us.
All right, thank you so much, Hussein. I'll come back to you, Faith and Pesh. Before I forget this, I need you guys to note this down. The Kayole, the working group has done a lot of work in trying to foster police-citizen conversations. I remember the last time you guys had hosted, the DPP, and of course you've had a lot of conversations. I'd like us to pick some lessons from those conversations we've had in trying to foster that relationship. But Demas, I don't know. I'm a Christian, yes. I believe in heaven and hell, but I also believe in earthly justice. But many of us just seem to want to wash their hands and say these police, they are cursed. That's why they die poor and there's karma. How does this mentality of karma and hell and heaven and sin defeat earthly justice that the victims and the survivors of police brutality deserve? 1, 2, there's a question here that is it possible ever to get justice? Is it ever possible to get justice for victims of police brutality? I think as you could tell us, one, the first question, then the second question, and what you guys have done as Amnesty International and some of the notable victories you've had,
Okay. So the issue about karma and about earthly justice, I think is a tricky one because first of all, I'm not quite qualified to speak on theological issues. But what I can say is that justice, as much as it's a long arc, it requires our participation. It requires that we demand it. In a country like the USA, the humanity of Black people was not realized in a day or in a decade even. It was realized after long struggles and long interpretations of what their constitution, not even the Bible, what their constitution meant when it spoke about equality before the law, when it talked about and how everyone has inherent dignity. The world after World War II also came to a realization that human rights should be something that is owed to you because of you simply being human. Because if you accord humanity to our national or even religious beliefs, you'd find that it becomes problematic because then everyone derives that humanity from them being a member of a certain race, certain religion, or a certain culture. And that is what I think should drive our conversation. How do we make, let's not wait for earthly justice. How do we make accountability a reality? How do we make justice a reality for victims of so many years of invisible torture and pervasive mistreatment by the very organs that are supposed to protect them? And how we do this is through improving our justice system, ensuring that everyone is educated on their rights, and also by also engaging our media, because I've found that the few changes that have been coming have come out of conversations and trainings with our media fraternity, who no longer, I don't think when is the last time you heard or you saw a headline that said police have gunned down 5 gangsters? These days they want to go a little deeper and understand what were the circumstances, who was the witness. Because for a long time we used to sanitize these killings and this mistreatment. What was the second question, if you may rehash?
The second question is that, is it possible to get justice for victims of police brutality? There's a question there. Somebody felt like it's not possible to get justice. Why would we pursue it if it cannot be achieved?
Well, and I think Khalid alluded to it a little earlier. We should strive for a country that looks at everyone equally before the law. Accountability is something that comes after the fact. So how do we avoid policing that uses unproportionate or extrajudicial violence on people? There are many strategies that have been proposed. One of them is community policing, whereby the police and the communities come together to seek solutions to the problems that they have in their areas, right? So that members of the public would very easily engage the police on a certain black spot and what should be done about it and things like that. Not justice just coming out of the violent engagement with people. Another strategy is meaningful oversight, whereby the Inspector General knows that he's answerable to the Constitution and the Parliament to some extent, whereby the Minister himself knows that he's answerable to the people of Kenya. These are cultural changes that even and we've seen, even with a constitution like ours, it will take some time to realize that cultural change, whereby the police are not just there to hurt members of the public. In the past, I remember in I think 2014, IJM went to court to challenge a certain law that had a provision in the penal code of something called bond to keep peace, where the police used to arrest you and then give you bond without even taking you to court and say that you pay this amount and then you're supposed to keep peace. You see that was smack in the principle of innocent till proven guilty. It was they don't even have to be a complainant or a crime. It's just a suspicion. You see, so we've moved out of that era to now an era where you cannot be presented to court before 24 hours. So we are making short, small strides towards justice, which I said is a long arc, but eventually we get to where we want to go. But active citizenry, the rule of law by the duty bearers is quite important for this.
Thank you so much. And I'll come back with an interesting conversation about disappearances, forced disappearances, which is also a major issue in this conversation. If you're watching, continue to ask your questions. We'll be reading them live. Continue tweeting using the hashtag the invisible line. That's the hashtag we're using today, so that then we can have conversation and we can follow your chats and your conversation. But keep the comments coming. Faith, Kasina, and Pesh. Lessons about engaging the police. Is it possible to fruitfully engage the police and it's ni kama kupuliza gunia, effort in futility?
Yes, Danish, thank you. Yeah. Engaging the police is not easy because as past they view human rights defenders as their enemy, you know. So we've tried doing these dialogues, we've tried engaging the police, we've tried visiting them, we've tried painting police stations, trying to do anything possible for us to have a good relationship between the police and human rights defenders and the community. But then again, every other time you find that there's this big gap between the community and the police. And it's sad to say that it keeps widening day in, day out, because the community has really lost hope in the police. They just believe that they are not into. There's no police officer who is good. There's no police officer who has the goodwill of the community in their hearts. Another thing is that the community believes, especially the youth, they believe that the police officers are their enemies, you know, because every other time the police officer sees them, they see criminals. The first thing, if you see an officer arresting a youth from just someone who was passing by, and is a youth from Madare, Kayole, Dandora, you realize that it's really, the gap is really widening. The police officer every other time they see youth, they see bank smokers, whether you're coming from work or wherever it is you're coming from, they have to extort money from you in the name of you. They found bang in your bag or something. They just find something to say that you are on the wrong. Again, it's the fact that victims of police brutality, most of them never get justice. It's something else that makes this conversation so hard, because the community, most of them have lost hope. They can't come forward to have these conversations because their sons were killed. these either fathers or mothers whose sons were killed, either wives who have lost husbands. So calling them for discussions, to come and have these discussions, to come for dialogues, to come and have these discussions openly with the police, it's always hard, because most of them tell you that even if we have these discussions, my son will not come back, my husband will not come back home tonight. So again, it's always hard. Another thing is victims, witnesses of these violations won't come forward because of the rights that are always meted on witnesses by police officers or the perpetrators of these crimes. So these conversations are hard to have, but then we've really tried as Social Justice Centers Working Group to have these conversations. Whenever, whichever place there's a justice center, there are these conversations ongoing, because we believe that one day we'll have a society that believes the police, a society that lives together in harmony between the police and the youth, mostly because the people here in question are the youth. Police have issues with the youth. I don't know what's really happening, but every other time in every community you visit, you find that there are these issues. The police, the arbitrary arrest mostly meted on youth, especially young men. Yes, so maybe Perpetua can continue from there, but I would say personally these conversations are not easy conversations that are not so easy conversations to have in our communities. We tried having one with the DPP when the DPP came to Kayole, but then we did not see much from that. More than 1,000 people from Kayole came to actually air their grievances. You know, there were police there, but then nothing much has come from that conversation. The cases that were taken, the victims and the survivors have not gotten answers from the questions and the cases they gave out. So you find that even makes our work more hard, because again, anytime you want to call these people for discussions, again, they will tell us that we need answers from the first conversations we started having. Again, even if we raise questions about these killer cops, about these police officers who keep harassing youth and who keep arresting them, you find that nothing is really being done and no answers come forth. And again, if there are answers, the police officers just get transferred. So they'll go to another area, go keep frustrating and brutalizing the people of that community. So it's always a cycle. From Kayole, you're taken to Shaurimoyo. Again, you go to Githurai after you've done your shit in that area. No prosecution really of these officers who are always on the wrong.
So yes, just to add on what Kasina has said, sometime last year we held a dialogue after the ODPP had come. We decided to have a dialogue with the Kayole police station, and we actually had the dialogue inside the police station compound. And youth were so fearful to come because obviously the community sees the police as the enemy. And so we decided to have this conversation with some of the police and also some of these victims that we have documented cases from them. And our community youth asked a question to the police as to why whenever there is a case or there is this musako, they always beat everybody. They don't care if you're a mother, if you're a youth, they will always beat you up. And what came out, the police said that when it's raining, the rain will rain on everybody. It won't choose whether you are old or you are young. So this conversation needs to go on, and because we thought these two dialogues will bring change, but basically what the police have done, it has created more enemies, and it has profiled itself that it is not there to protect the people really, it is there to protect the system. And And we also this year we came together as the members of the community and also the Kayole Justice Centers and the Mothers of Victim Network, and we tried to write a petition to the parliament about what's the work of the Nyumba Kumi, because these Nyumba Kumi are the one who profile youth in the community. You'll find a Nyumba Kumi knows a youth, they know their family, they know he's not into crime. But whenever a youth is being suspected by the police of being a thief, they will always be the first one to profile him as a criminal, just because they have not done their backup research or they have not investigated these youths well. We also, the Mothers of Victim also suggested if these police who are being these killer cops, because every area we have killer cops and they are well known. And even the community, even the children, they will tell you call these police by names, because these policemen usually don't wear uniform, you see. So they're not by they are the community, and they're not really profiled. But what happens when a policeman is being accused of something? What happens? This policeman is not
Hello, have we lost Pesh? Can you hear Pesh? Can any of you hear Pesh? If you can hear Pesh, oh, you can't hear her. Okay, as they're fixing the connection, I need us to end this conversation. We just have like about 25 more minutes to go. I want us to end it on a high note. Sometimes I know this, we may, sometimes we may read from the Book of Lamentations, and it's fine because Lamentations also helps us to heal and to debrief and to do this. Hussein, before I bring in Asha, I'd want to bring you back. The Invisible Line documentary is a fantastic documentary, but it will not go into the mainstream media, which controls the masses. You know that the Nation, NTVs, and the rest, Yet I know Haki Africa has used the media so many times to advocate for what they're doing. How is it that how can we take this conversation to go mainstream so that then the Invisible Line doesn't just stop in this beautiful conversation we've had in this platform, and we take it to mainstream channels, that then we can have a bigger conversation and we can open the eyes of many, many more people?
Thank you, Danish. And I think that's a very good question, because these are the pertinent issues that Kenyans need to appreciate and address. It's unfortunate that documentaries such as The Invisible Line hardly see the day in our mainstream media. And I think it's because we have somehow channeled our media houses to concentrate on issues that are perhaps political, but they don't speak to issues that affect Mwananchi. So it is a big challenge, and it's something that we need to work on, particularly as human rights defenders, to try and make sure that human stories, real life stories that affect Wanjiku on a day-to-day basis are actually captured by the mainstream media, because that's the only way we can have this discourse out there for everyone to contribute to and to talk about. It's unfortunate we are now, mainstream media is full of BBI and politics and 2022 and, politicians inciting different communities and issues that are very important to Wanjiku are left out. I think one of the ways to do this is by human rights defenders to also reach out to journalists, to media houses. When we are talking about training for the police service, when we're talking about curriculum for the police service, I think it's important that we also look at other sectors, including the media, and ask ourselves, do they have the necessary training? Because if important issues such as this are not featured in our local or mainstream media, then we have a problem. So Danish, I think this is a challenge, particularly for us as human rights defenders, to reach out to our brothers and sisters, the journalists in the media sector, and find ways of getting them to cover important issues that affect the common Mwananchi.
Thank you so much, Hussein. Just to add to that, as a journalist, I worked in the mainstream media for about 7 years, and I came into the human rights world in 2018 after I quit formal employment for 10 years. The problem I have, or maybe the suggestion I'd make, is that there's something about framing, that sometimes in the human rights world, we frame conversations that speak to us. We are always speaking to the converted. So sometimes, we use words, connecting struggles, beautiful, but the larger audience don't know it, human rights defenders, the larger audience, so I don't know. Hopefully, maybe perhaps when I'm doing my master's thesis, I could do research on how then do we use the power of language to demystify human rights, so that then we are able to talk about very simple things that anybody gets, so that Kenyans don't feel like being an active citizen is a career, that being an active citizen is for Hussein Alids and Boniface Mwangis and Demas and Irungu Hutons and Ashas and editors, that as long as you are a Kenyan, you can be an active citizen because you care about your country, you care about humanity. And that basically is what needs to be that. So that is, and Forum, I'm available to host this conversation to try to bridge the gap between mainstream media and the human rights defenders world, so that then we can take these conversations forward. Asha Jafar, before...
Very well put, Danish. Very, very well put.
Asante sana. Asha, there's a question here for you. Not even a question, actually, it's a comment that there's a gendered aspect to police brutality that needs to be highlighted. That, there's also a gendered aspect of it. I don't know if you feel that is legitimate, because evidence shows that boys and men are the majority of victims of police brutality. But then there's an interesting conversation here of gendered issues to police brutality. How true is that? And then secondly, I love what the Dandora Community Justice Center did to Caroline Mwatha, who died in 2018. In 2019, actually, last year. I remember Hussein, by the way, we met at the mortuary when they're doing the post-mortem. But they memorialize her and call her Carol Mtetezi. And, every time we go to Dandora Community Justice Center or any of this, we sing her songs. Asha, what do you think we can do to remember their names, that we don't forget them, especially human rights defenders, the Willie Kimanis, the people who have paid a heavy price for that? Asha.
Yeah, for the first question about like the gendered aspect, for me, like I don't believe that's actually a factor. It's just that I think how Kenya is patriarchal is that most men are actually found at night, most of them, or on stuff like the way they hang out is very different from how women hang out. Like how the society is socialized, women are more in the house and men are more in like Kwamabez. They go like to Mjengo and stuff like that. So that's how like I believe they encounter like police brutality more. But I believe that it's actually like gendered. Like I don't believe that if I'm a woman and I'm out with a guy, the police will be like, don't hit Asha because she's a let's beat this guy only. I don't believe so. I just believe it's men that actually go out to hustle more, or they're found out outside or in like corner or like assumed to be dangerous by the police. That's I think my nation. Even in Kibera, it's like more men go out to fend for their families. So if during the curfew hours, they are the ones who are found out to be hanging out like longer than women in the house where to bring food to the table, like that. Of course, the second question, I think I can connect to the Black Lives Matter. For the people that have been killed before, I feel like to actually keep this relevant or to keep their history relevant, it's actually like keep talking about it. Like I've seen T-shirts, like naming things after them and stuff like that. So like it's the Black Lives Matter movement has made so many cases relevant up until now. Like people can still speak about the police brutality that happened 5 years ago, 6 years ago and stuff. Like it's still relevant because every time someone speaks about a case that happened today, they will try and connect it to the case that happened 5 years ago. So for me, like I feel like also it's more. It looks like if I say it, it would look like capitalistic, but I feel like printing T-shirts, making things that will make them relevant to like for them to stay, and also keeping their name because in Kibera what I've the painted graffiti of people who have died. Like we had a scholar who came from the US and was shot down by the police because he was assumed to be a criminal, and how I saw like how the community mourned him, and to keep his name relevant is they painted his name everywhere with graffiti. We had t-shirts being sold everywhere, and also every time there's a police brutality, we always refer back to the cases that happened before, to also to also like keeping a name alive is also like keeping history alive. It's like how we're taught, to Wangari Maathai and people like who fought for our history. It's not because it's not because like we don't have greater people right now. It's just that because their history determined what we are living now. So it's also like connecting the dots and stuff like that. So for me, like I feel like that's the way we should embrace keeping the names of people who have died, in the hands of the police alive.
Demas, there's an interesting question here. Thank you so much, Asha, for that. And I think also a lot of songs, we need to sing their songs and to remember them. We need to memorialize them. I'm very passionate about writing and about documenting stories. We also need to tell their stories. We never have to forget about them, Tulu Apale is of the opinion that perhaps we need to abolish the police. Do you think the conversation that is happening in the US of defunding the police needs to come to Kenya? Do we need the police when they're the biggest source of our misery through extortion, forced disappearances?
I think there is the people misconstrue what defunding means. So defunding actually means taking out the money from certain core functions of the police and putting it in other areas that are quite connected. So that, for example, we have a lot of money that goes into public order management. The tear gas that never runs out, the rifles, the sticks. Yet, actually, if you look at the training manual in public order management, only about 2 people should have guns. The rest should have non-lethal and other forms of weapons that are not supposed to hurt people. Another thing about the protests that you see, the public order management you see in Kenya, is that we use assault rifles, AK-47s and things like that. That rifle was not made for certain areas, and no wonder you see many people being killed in balconies and in other places. So defunding might actually mean removing some money from the budgets that we used to buy weapons and putting it in strengthening community policing mechanisms. It might also be used to giving opportunities to the urban youth, so that their improved socioeconomic status will not make them minded to crime. And so it is a good conversation to have. It has happened in certain places, and it has had fruitful outcomes. There's a usual return to factory setting whenever we are policing certain areas, and also whenever we're doing public order management or dealing with certain types of crimes. For example, extrajudicial killings in Kenya happen in 3 avenues. One avenue is in the fight against terrorism, where certain communities are profiled and a lot of disappearances and killings happen. The other avenue is fighting urban crime, criminal activities in urban areas, where even special units are formed with funny names to go and hunt down these criminals. And the third avenue is actually public order management, so that you find that the coronavirus was the perfect storm in terms of the need for public order management. We've seen that in every election or every political moment in Kenya, there are usually an increase in extrajudicial killings. So we really need to reimagine how we carry out policing in this country, and not go back to that default, return to factory setting or default setting, where only force can be used to ensure law and order.
All right. Thank you, Demas. As we come to the close of what I think has been a really illuminating conversation. I'd like to start with Faith, Kasina, and Pesh as they give their final comment in about 2 minutes. But I want this final comment to be about a call to action. I'd like to know if I am in Garbatula and I want to start a social justice center, or I want to start a community initiative. How do I go about it? What are the practical steps I need? I'd like Pesh and Faith Kasina to answer that question as they also make their final submissions, and then we'll go to the next person as we come to an end.
Thank you so much, Danish. So, wherever you are, if you want to organize, first of all, no one from outside can come to deal with your issues in your community. You need to organize your community around the issues affecting them. Is it police brutality? Organize around police brutality. Educate the people about the issues affecting them. Others know that they are affected. Others don't even know whether they are affected, by the way, you know. So again, make the community understand that my issue is your issue, and I'm not gonna be free if you're not free, and you're not free if I'm not free. So organize the community around issues affecting them, and start a justice center there. You know, start a justice center in your community to address the issues affecting your community and to come up with the solutions for those issues, because there's no one who can fight for you better than you yourself. There's no liberators in this country. It's only us who can liberate ourselves.
Pesh?
Having a justice center in your local is very important. It's very important because the community itself will come to speak up for itself. We can't wait for NGOs to come to speak for us on behalf of us. And that's what the Social Justice Centers Working Group has brought to light. That we can tell our story from us and write our stories with our experiences without somebody else coming in and asking us questions to write. So my final comment is we need to really know who are the police protecting really. Because you can't tell me that a police in Kilimani and a police in Kayole, they're different. They're doing the same thing, but acting differently and treating the citizen differently. So this is the question that we would love our government, the DCI, the ODPP, to really answer us. Because since the dialogue last year, they haven't even come back to us and told us these cases have reached where. So we need answers, and we need to know who are the police really, what are their mandates, because even these police don't know even the law that they are protecting. Because when you go to a police station, for example, maybe someone has been arrested and you ask questions, they will talk to you badly, but they will treat you according to how you have approached them. So if you look like someone from the hood, they will treat you badly. But if you come on a suit and you're the same person from the hood, they will treat you with respect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pesh. Demas, I'd like you to give us your final comments and a call to action. I feel a lot of helplessness in pursuing justice. I'd like you to give us a call to action to that in a minute.
Okay. There is a danger that we keep maintaining in our laws. We have very many petty offenses in our statute books, offenses that really have no victims. It's just state regulations. So, for example, drunk and disorderly, for example, touting, for example, even living in the proceeds of prostitution. So we need to declassify and decriminalize certain petty offenses, because these offenses are actually what criminalize poverty, like in the literal sense. For Vaite, who was found outside and is a homeless person, would have easily been charged with loitering, or vagrancy. So we really need to look at our statute books, remove these criminal offenses that not help anyone, but that actually decriminalize poverty, and that divert important state machinery, prosecution, judicial investigations from serious crimes like sexual and gender-based violence and robbery with violence and things like that, so that the police can do their work where it matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, the National Council on Administrative of Justice has said that petty and traffic cases crowd out more serious cases, and you're right about that. Hussein Khalid, I need you to speak to younger activists who are passionate about transforming their communities. Speak as an elder who has transformed and has done a lot through Haki Africa, you know, as your final comment, and of course you give us a final comment in a minute.
Sorry there. I think for me and to fellow HRDs, particularly the young and upcoming, whom we are very proud of because they're doing an excellent job, particularly in social justice centers in different parts of the country. I think the message is keep up the struggle. We are definitely not there yet, and we would like to see more being done, particularly in our communities. We have exemplary individuals who are coming up, and I think the future is there for everyone to play a role in ensuring we have a truly democratic country that respects individuals' rights and dignity. So my parting shot would be to fellow human rights defenders to continue the struggle and to ensure that Kenya becomes that place that we all are proud of and want to.
Thank you so much. Asha Jafar, I'm going to give you a blank check to make your final submissions and to give us a call to action.
I think for me, I will say that it's high time we stand ourselves and not be afraid of the police, and also to bring these discussions to issues where like these discussions don't happen. Like I like the fact that John-Allan Namu is actually like doing great in speaking about police brutality, but we need to also like act individually to like make this conversation normal. Like the fact that right now in the US you can't go anywhere without speaking about the Black Lives Matter movement, actually been made so so relevant that it's actually like features on the news every day. Everyone is speaking about it, the t-shirts everyone is wearing. It's actually a reality that people are living every day. And for me, like I feel like Kenyans, we already passed the US level. It's just that we need actually to have merge forces and merge forces speak out. I feel like you're already speaking out, but I think like someone said before that Kenyans are not angry enough, which I feel like we should be angry already. It's high time, like this needs to stop. And also like blaming it to the colonial past, it makes, but it's 50 years later. We don't have an excuse anymore. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Asha Jafar. I actually think we are angry, and we shouldn't qualify the rule of law through anger, that you must be angry for the rule of law to be implemented. Sometimes I feel like that is a valid comment, but we are human beings. We don't need to be angry. Anger is bad for our mental health, it's bad for our ulcers, it's bad for everything. We are human beings deserving of dignity, and that is my final comment. And just as we are coming to a close of this illuminating conversation, The Invisible Line, continue to use the hashtag The Invisible Line. Watch the documentary, which will be posted on Africa Uncensored YouTube pages and Facebook. I think they've already done that after the premiere, which we had done a few minutes, like an hour ago. Continue interacting with this conversation and make it relevant. Also, look for an organizing mechanism. Is it a grassroots organization? Is it an NGO? Is it a community justice center in your community? And get involved, because remember that we must all be involved in changing this narrative. But now, coming to an end, I'd like to thank my fantastic panelists, the very knowledgeable Demas Kiprono from Amnesty International, Pesh and Faith Kasina from the from the Kayole Social Justice Center, Hussein, Khalid, Idi, Haki Africa, and Asha Jafar, community organizer from Kibra, for such a fantastic conversation. I'd also like to thank Africa Uncensored for the amazing work they are doing in documenting some of these stories and narratives that are being ignored by the mainstream media. I pray and hope that we have this conversation flowing into the mainstream media. I'd also like to thank the ForumCiv and specifically the Wajibu Wetu program that is supported through the support of the Embassy of Sweden in Kenya for this amazing conversation, which was part of the Democracy Week, which we held, by the way, and we had amazing conversation. Adios, and may you have a more active, driven day so that then we are able to take back our country from the cabal of elites who want to run us down. Adios, and thank you.